Welcome to Esoteric Thoughts. Today we have special guest, James Weeks. James, can you please start by telling us who is James Weeks?
All right. Well, I am originally from St. Croix, Virgin Islands. I'm the author of the book Meditations Across the King's River, African Inspired Wisdom for Life's Journey. I'm the producer of the upcoming documentary film Across the King's River, Finding and Fulfilling Your Life's Journey. I'm also a spiritual and financial coach. I provide people with strategies for emotional, spiritual, financial wellness. I am also a Babalawo or priest in the Ifa spiritual tradition that comes from Nigeria, West Africa. And I provide daily inspiration through my page, the Facebook page, Across the King's River.
Can you tell us a bit more about your spiritual belief system and what does it have in common with other cosmologies such as Kemet?
Okay, so I'm not really well versed on Kemet and how that differs. But what I can tell you is the philosophy, the tradition that we call Ifas is very, 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 very old. Many experts and scholars say it predates Christianity. At the heart, and also when we speak of a belief system or like a philosophy like Ifa, it's important to understand that it's not, to me, it's beyond like a belief system. And we have to understand that we're really talking about civilization, an entire civilization. And when you look at our tradition, you could look at it from the standpoint of through history, right? There's a saying our elders say, Ifa covers everything. So you could look at it from the standpoint of a culture. You could look at it from the standpoint of poetry. You could look at it from the standpoint of philosophy. You could look at it from the standpoint of mathematics. You could look at it from the standpoint of ancestral veneration, ancestral worship. You could look at it from the standpoint of this is medicine. You could look at it from the standpoint of this is cuisine. Why? Because we eat, right? And some people may offer certain foods to deities. You could look at it from the standpoint of ecology. Why? Why ecology? Why all of these things? Well, because at the root, at the heart of this tradition and many of the traditions of Africa, they're based on a respect for nature. Respecting nature, understanding that we come from nature. It's a celebration of nature, the wisdom of nature. This is so crucial. And I feel that if, and this is where it transcends belief, because right now, all of us on the planet, we are affected by climate change, disproportionately so, right? And here we have a philosophy saying, but wait a minute, we are part of nature, that this tradition doesn't look us at human beings as being the pinnacle of life. We look at it as, well, the rest of creation, those are our brothers and sisters, right? And it's crucial that I feel that philosophies like that has more respect for nature gets elevated at this time, because our planet is in such peril, it's in such danger, because the world has strayed away from that understanding, right? And the world has strayed to a position that the earth is just here, just for exploitation, just for our own wants and needs today. Forget about tomorrow, but what could we extract from the earth today? This is one of the reasons why philosophies like these are critical to our understanding, but also to our well-being. So part of the medicine that all of us need is having that relationship to nature, having that connection to the environment. But when you look at how all of us have been pulled away from growing our own foods, right? We don't do that. We've been pulled away from interacting with the earth in any meaningful way. All of these things have consequences for us. Consequences in terms of more emotional instability, consequences in terms of poor health, and just lack of understanding of the basic life cycles. So to me, just these types of philosophies are beyond beliefs. These are like well-being systems. And the reason why I like to stay in the phase of calling it like a well-being system is because oftentimes when it comes to discussions of philosophies, it becomes like an argument. Well, this person believes this person believes that. This person believes this person believes that. Whereas personally, I look at philosophy, I look at tradition, spirituality as a celebration, not as this one is right, this one is wrong, whatever. I look at it as what can we bring to the table? How can we improve each other's life? How can we enhance? How can we live? How can we be more productive? How can we be happier? How can we be healthier? How can we fulfill what we feel our purpose on this earth is? This is how I look at these things.
So, what would you say is the importance of people seeking traditional African spirituality rather than religion?
What I would say is, I would say simply that understanding that there are things within these philosophies that can benefit them, right? And to explore them with an open mind, to understand that some of these practices can help them improve the quality of their life. So it's beyond, again, belief, but how can we better our lives? Can we improve our relationship with our children? Can we improve our relationship with the people that we love? Can we live with more clarity about what we feel our purpose is? So it's understanding that these traditions have something to offer us. And also I would say that a lot of the things that we've been told about our traditions are not true. They have been, too often African traditions have been demonized by colonialists, but not only by colonialists, but by our own people. We've been taught to hate anything that comes from Africa. We've been taught to hate it, particularly spirituality. We've been taught not to have anything whatsoever to do with it. And so one of my mentors, he made a comment. It was actually in his book, I think, Dr. Wande Abimbola, who's one of the world's expert on the Ifa tradition. He made a comment that said, I believe he said it. There are two things he said. On the African continent, there's almost no holiday for any African tradition. So you'll find holidays, spiritual holidays for Christians and for Muslims, but for your own, none, right? Except in Benin. Benin would be the only exception, right? Where Vodun is recognized that way. But here it is for your own, there's the zero. And then a political leader in Africa who's running for any political office, he will never, ever say that he practices an African faith. Never. Don't look for that to happen. He will either say he's a Christian or he's a Muslim. And more than likely he'll say, oh, I'm a Christian. But they have to distance themselves from anything associated with Africa in terms of like the spiritual thing. And when you look at it, think about it this way: what someone believes is a human right, right? And so what has been happening for centuries is human rights violation. When people are told that their traditions are not relevant to the rest of the world, when people are told, oh, what you do is evil, it's so destructive. Not too long ago, when I say not too long ago, this was late last year, maybe around August, at some point last year, I was listening, and not in person, I was listening online, a video of this woman of European descent talking, and she's actually a medium. So she's a medium, but she's a well-known medium in the US, right? So she was talking about how, when you go to certain places, there's like dark energy in certain places. She was just talking about wherever you go, she was talking, basically her message was to telling people to be sensitive about certain energies. And she was talking about how as human beings, we are all sensitive to energies. And then she made a comment like, well, Santeria, which is an offshoot of the Yoruba spiritual tradition, is dark energy. She made that comment twice. Oh, that's dark energy. So here it is. You have someone who's supposed to be promoting, because she's a medium, she's dealing with people who have passed on ancestral work. But what does she mean? So here she is. She's on some public platform telling people, oh, this is dark energy. And no one challenges because they don't know enough to challenge it. But this is how, racist thought is passed on. Now, do I think the woman is racist? Actually, don't. I don't think she's a racist. But she has this in her head that, oh, because they sacrifice or whatever, not they, we, oh, that's dark energy. And what she has done with just a blanket statement like that, she has just thrown a whole civilization out the window. So what is she saying by, when you say it's dark energy, what are you saying? Are you saying that the poetry in our tradition, are you saying that's dark energy? Are you saying that the people who call on their ancestors for support, they're engaging in dark energy? Are you saying that the mathematics that you will find in our division system is dark energy? Are you saying that philosophy is dark energy? Are you saying that how we view history is dark energy? You see what I'm saying, right? She just categorically, with that one ignorant statement, just blasted this is an entire civilization of people. This isn't just like a belief, and that's why I often steer away from it as just a belief. This is art. You're talking about culture that people created. You're talking about so many things. You're talking about oral traditions. You're talking about so many things. And with that just one statement, she just threw the whole thing out the window. Oh, that's dark energy. And because people don't know any better, they're going to associate it with some type of dark energy, and they're not going to see that by doing so, they really rob themselves of a chance to engage with other people in a meaningful way, to have meaningful conversations with people potentially, because you can approach it from so many angles. There's so many conversations that could be had that's not limited to even what we call spirituality, because we could talk about it from herbal medicine or alternative medicine, or you see what I'm saying? And this is why it becomes dangerous in many ways if I feel we're not careful,
One of the arguments that I hear, even from people on the continent, is that traditional African spiritual systems are primitive, and man has evolved. Our knowledge of God or a supreme being has evolved, and the traditional belief systems don't fit in the new modern world. What would you say to that?
I would say those are ignorant people. I mean, to be blunt and direct, it's just ignorant nonsense. That type of arrogance that they would make a statement like that. And this is what makes me angry. They would not dare say that about Christianity. They don't say that. They don't make that comment about Islam. They don't make that comment about Buddhism. They don't say, oh, why are people practicing Buddhism and Taoism? Don't they know human life has evolved? Would they go to like these pastors in the US or pastors anywhere, Joel Osteen or TD Jakes, and say, TD Jakes, why do you believe about this man called Christ? Don't you know human civilization has evolved? Why are you even looking at the Bible? Don't you know that whatever the Bible is, not all 100% true? They wouldn't dare go to people like that, but they feel empowered to come to us or people and make these ignorant statements, which is bogus. And so one of the things that I always like to point out, and I mentioned this in my book, is the fact that computer technology, as we know it, it has its roots in African spiritual traditions, in the sense that the divination systems that we use are where they got the binary code from. So that's something that I point out in my book, Meditations Across the Kings River. And my understanding of this came from one day I was watching a YouTube presentation by a well-known ethno-mathematician in the US. His name is Dr. Ron Eglash, and he talks about this. Well, he talks at the end of his presentation, it was a talk on African fractals. And at the very end of this, it was a TED talk. At the very end of this TED talk, he talks about the evolution of the modern computer, and then he talks about the binary code, and he makes the statement, every digital circuit started in Africa. He said all these little laptops and all of these little PDAs started in Africa. And this is a Jewish American scientist. This isn't some African trying to convince people of Africa or anything, right? But this is an expert in engineering and science who's stating this is where it comes from. You know, and he talks about the evolution of how this binary code, which, you know, it came up through the Middle Ages as geomancy, but it's based off of our mathematical systems, based off of divination. That's why computer has 256 bits. What do you call bits? Our divination system has 256 odus or patterns, whatever you want to call it. So here are these ignorant people talking about, oh, you have evolved. And that's the part that makes me angry at times. When the Western world uses, in a sense, a system, a technology that was inspired in a way from our spiritual traditions, and they want to call us primitive. And they're using this every day. Well then, and that's so insulting to me. I mean, that type of mentality that people have, you know, but here it is that it's a reality. The world is using something that, if you look back far enough, you could see shadows of it that comes all the way back to Africa, out of our systems. And then, you know, people like us are told, oh, but you're doing dark energy. Oh, but, you know, don't you know the world has evolved? You know, it's bogus. There's no validity for that whatsoever, you know?
Something else I hear pretty often, especially coming out of the Christian religious system, is this concept of heaven and hell. What's your concept?
Okay, so that concept of a heaven and a hell doesn't really exist per se in our tradition like that. And one of my mentors, his name was Dr. Afolabi Apega. The Yorubas, I mean, our systems, we don't believe in a concept of something being 100% good and something being 100% bad. You know, it's our philosophy is sort of parallel to the whole that whole Taoism symbol of yin and yang, of light and darkness. But nothing is 100% good and nothing is 100% bad. So the way how they say it is, there's good and evil, and there's evil and good. But it doesn't mean that good and evil are the same things. It simply means that for every situation that we say is good, right, whatever it is, well, there's something in it that is not good. For every situation that we say is just terrible, not good, oftentimes there's something in it that might be beneficial. There might be some blessing, although at first glance, it may not look that way. And so our job as human beings is to find out, well, what is that blessing? So take the case of maybe someone gets ill, physically ill, right? That's not good, right? But maybe during that time in which they get ill, maybe they might start to realize that, but the values that they were living were not good. Maybe they were overworking themselves, which they should not have been. Maybe they were neglecting their family. Maybe they were neglecting other things in life that have meaning to them. And during this period of illness, maybe they start to look at life differently. And maybe they start to realize, but this life is short. I should live differently. Maybe I should do the things that I love doing. So in that sense, the goodness out of that illness is the wisdom that was required, right? So in every situation, take example Barack Obama becomes president of the United States, first president of the United States, everyone is, Black people are rejoicing the world over, right? Which is something that's good, it's a good image for our kids to see. But at the same time, out of that good thing, okay, we have an image, there's this backlash building among white supremacists. There's this anger building that turns around and brings out a Donald Trump years later, or because Obama's in office, because he has to be everybody's president, he cannot be as vocal for Black people as maybe he might want to be. Why? It's because he's already under pressure, right? You see what I'm saying? So even out of something that was good, there's something that's not good. And so this is true of every situation. So the concept of hell being a place for bad people to go and heaven is a place for good people to go is not, it's not a philosophy that has a parallel in our tradition like that, because everything is the way how the ancients saw it. They saw it, everything is a cycle. So light exists, but darkness has to exist too. And why? In order for us to grow and evolve, for us to evolve and become better, there must be some type of dark, or else what are we doing? If we can't improve, why are we here? So the notion that we go to a place where we don't need to improve anymore is not, well, then what's the point? If we're in a state where it's bliss, but we can't, then how are we growing, right? And so it's more about how do we find balance where we are, and how can, from that standpoint, good will always exist, just like truth will always exist, but darkness or bad or evil, that will always exist too, because it's a continuous wheel that it's always been there. It's like you go to the ocean and there's a constant ebb and a flow. It doesn't just ebb in one direction, and no, it's an exchange. So heaven is going to visit hell, and hell is going to visit heaven. And the people those in the hell who are coming have something to learn. You see what I'm saying? And people in heaven have something to learn from people in hell too, right? Like forgiveness. How this person can change? So the whole idea of heaven and hell is, it kind of wipes out the notion that people can change, that people can grow, that people are not stuck. Somebody might have been done terrible things, but should they be punished forever? Can they not change? The whole concept of ancestors is that of people changing. We could benefit from people changing, you see? That's what I would say. That's how I would respond.
One of the other things I often hear is that there is no God outside of ourselves, that we are gods.
Mm-hmm.
What is how do you confront that?
How do I? Well, I would say, I believe that we all have a God energy within us, right? And that we are part of God's body, however we want to say. But to say that we, are God, to me, that would be like saying, I am my mother and my father. I'm not my mother and my father. You see? I'm not my mother and my father, but I have traits of them. I have traits of both my mother, and I have traits of my father. So we are one in that sense. But I don't personally subscribe to the idea of us just as individuals being God like that. Do we have the God force? Yes. Do we have God-like potential? Yes. Can we be way greater than we can? Yes. But the other thing I would say is, all of us, we have a need for each other, right? We don't really exist independently on our own. We are interdependent, and that's a beautiful thing. So for me, the notion of interdependence is so important for our growth and our development. Understanding that, no, we're not meant here to serve ourselves, so to speak. We're meant to serve others, but we're also meant to learn from each other, all of us.
So, given what you know about history and what you know about spirituality, what is it about any of the Abrahamic belief systems why you wouldn't follow them?
Well, it's not so much that I wouldn't follow them. It's just that I wasn't called to. So for me, it wasn't that I woke up one day and said, oh, I think I'm going to go down this road versus this road. It was, so how I got into this tradition for the most part was out of a family crisis. My son was getting into trouble with the law. This was like back in 2002. He was getting in trouble like it was just terrible, you know? It wasn't just like ordinary like rebellion, or the kid's not listening. He's getting arrested, wasn't doing well in school, running away, all kinds of things. It was to the point where I didn't know if one day to the next, I would find my son is dead or alive. He was part of caught up in gang culture. And so one day, out of desperation, someone mentioned to me that this Ifa diviner was in town. And so I went to this diviner only because I was concerned about my son. I wasn't like wanting to be part of anything. And so when he did the divination for me, that reading for me, he mentioned that my son was around some wrong people, but then he also mentioned me. He told me that I was meant to do this work. And in the future, I would become well known for doing this work. So there were some things that he said that really like resonated with me on some soul level. I felt like, in that moment, I felt like I heard this before in some other lifetime. It had such a profound effect on me. And so I felt, well, if this is my destiny, part of what my destiny is, well then I should pursue it. I should follow it. And that's where it came from. But it didn't come from a standpoint of, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to follow any other tradition, or I'm not going to listen to. It didn't come from that standpoint. It came from, this is what I was called to do. And that's still how I approach spirituality, as all of us paying attention to what resonates with us the most. For me, spirituality is about finding out how we can best serve humanity. This is how I see it. So for some people, it might be very well that they follow the Abrahamic faith. That's how they can best serve. For some people, it might be they're gonna, follow Islam. That's how they can best serve humanity. That's how I approach spirituality, is us getting in touch with what speaks to us, and then maybe using that as a way of bringing some type of healing into the world, as opposed to bringing more division and conflict into the world, but bringing some type of understanding in the world that makes people feel better and just live better lives. This is how I approach it.
James, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.